This is Access Door County, and I'm your host, Dan Mathein. On this program, we'll discuss new property use regulations with Kay Miller of the Door County Planning Department. Welcome, Kay.
Thank you for having me discuss these new regulations.
Well, Kay, can you briefly, I know it's tough to briefly describe anything that has to do with regulations, but can you briefly describe Act 170 and the new shoreline regulations?
Sure. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to give just a little bit of background with regard to shoreline zoning so everybody understands, and we're starting from the same point. In 1968, the state mandated the counties to administer NR 115, which is the administrative code for shoreline zoning.
Okay.
So in 1968, the state took over that program, and shoreline zoning deals with creation of lots, what sizes they need to be, setbacks from the water, impervious surface ratios, and regulations that would have an effect on essentially a water body.
Okay.
Shoreline zoning is in effect 1,000 feet from a water body, a lake or an inland lake, and then 300 feet from creeks and streams. So that's how we came into the program.
Okay.
In 2000, the DNR started the revision process to the code since nothing had been done since 1968 and development had changed, the way we were doing things had changed a little bit, and it was time probably to update the code. So the DNR started that process in 2000, and in 2010 we had new rules. The counties had until 2014 to adopt and implement these new rules. However, there recently were some more changes, and now we have a delayed implementation date of May of 2016.
Okay.
Where Act 170 comes into play here is at the end of the 2012 legislative session, the Wisconsin legislature essentially changed how state law regulates non-conforming structures and substandard lots in the shoreline area. This essentially is a direct reversal of past practice because Act 170 prohibits regulating non-conforming structures and substandard lots in a more restrictive manner than current state shoreline zoning standards in NR 115. Most often, NR 115 sets minimum state standards for shoreline zoning, which gives the counties the opportunity to be more restrictive. We have different geology, we have different population, we have different lake ecosystems, and that allows the counties to essentially tailor their shoreline zoning to the surrounding area, the high impact or low impact of development, their existing setbacks from water bodies. But Act 170 directly reversed that practice.
So if 170 reversed the practice, are things grandfathered, or?
Sure.
I mean, if I've got a lovely shack that I call a rental cottage right on the shore that's been there since 1936, it stays?
Sure. Act 170 or any of the shoreline zoning rules don't require any structures to be moved or relocated. But what Act 170 did was essentially we had to create the new rules that they've put in place, the DNR essentially, and implement them now, and we could no longer be more restrictive than them. And I'll go through them so we understand what they are. In addition, Act 170 also stated that counties can no longer regulate based on cost for the improvements to a non-conforming structure. That was known as the 50% rule. We have not implemented the 50% rule for over 20 years here, so that part of it didn't impact us.
Okay.
The other piece of legislation, or the other piece of Act 170, was that the substandard lots that are in place in Door County could no longer be regulated and stated that they were non-buildable if they meet certain criteria. So what we had to do in order to implement these changes is create a new shoreline zoning chapter in our existing ordinance. We took the existing shoreline rules and the new non-conforming rules and just put them into one chapter in our ordinance. Right now, they're scattered throughout. So
So for
it brings them into one place.
the property owner will now have one source to go to clarify what they can and can't do. Am I hearing that right?
The entire zoning ordinance could apply to their property, but for their specific shoreline rules, it'll be in one chapter, correct?
Excellent, excellent.
Yep,
That'll probably even make your life easier.
it will. It will.
That's a good thing.
Yes. The new non-conforming standards will help out a lot of people. They essentially state that you can maintain and repair your non-conforming principal structure. So this doesn't apply to sheds or detached garages. It would just be the principal structure, which is the home. It would allow some vertical expansion of a non-conforming principal structure as long as they can meet 3 or 4 different criteria, and that would also require mitigation. And this also would allow for the expansion of the non-conforming principal structure beyond the setback, which is what we allow now. And then one of the other new non-conforming features is that they can replace or relocate that non-conforming principal structure, and that also requires mitigation.
Okay. Can you define the word mitigation?
Yes.
I can't spell it, but I hope you can define it.
Yes. Mitigation is a practice that you would do on your property to offset the impacts of development.
Okay.
So a couple of examples would be if somebody was going to put a second story on their home, and there's going to be a point system for people to pick from because people know their property much better than we do as zoning administrators. If, for instance, they wanted to put a second story on their home, and now the ordinance allows that, they can mitigate the negative consequences. And an example would be to restore their shoreline vegetative buffer.
Oh.
Or if they already have one because they've been good stewards of the land and they have not cut their shoreline vegetation, they'll get points for that. So they can either revegetate and get points, or they may get points for things that already exist on their property.
What I'm hearing is it sounds like Act 170 made things a little bit more user-friendly. Is that an overstatement on my part?
I think it's a little bit of an overstatement. It may make it slightly easier for non-conforming structures to expand.
Okay.
But then there's going to be the mitigation aspect of it, and that's going to be up to the property owner whether or not they want to engage in that. But that's mandatory if they want to expand. And there'll be a variety of options for them to pick from.
Oh, excellent.
So,
Very good. You want to keep going, or should I ask a few questions?
sure, go ahead. You can ask a few questions.
Okay. Shoreline zoning. I don't live on the shore. I live close to it, but where does the shoreline start? You mentioned 1,000 feet from the shoreline. The darn water level keeps changing.
Right. He said it's 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water mark.
Oh, okay.
And even though our water level has been low, that hasn't changed and probably won't change for some time. It would have to be very, very long-term in order for that ordinary high water mark to change. So 1,000 feet from an ordinary high water mark would be the properties that would be included in shoreline zoning. And that includes interior lakes as well.
Clark and Kangaroo and,
Correct.
okay.
Yep. And then 300 feet from creeks and streams. So if you have a navigable stream, there'll be shoreline zoning on 300 feet of each side of it.
Define a navigable stream. A canoe or,
The DNR defines a navigable stream as one that you could, at one point during the season, float the smallest piece of watercraft down.
oh, okay. Boy, that's challenging. So
It is
it can be
challenging.
dry 9 months a year, but in the spring runoff,
Yes, you could essentially have one day of water
oh my gosh,
that would be
okay.
substantial, but it also has to have a defined bed and a defined bank.
Okay,
So it can't just be a grassy strip where it rushes through a yard and there's just a little hollow there. It does have to have a defined bed and bank as well.
Good, that's clear enough.
Okay.
So you're not, well, I'm thinking 1,000 feet from the high water mark. In some places, 1,000 feet in is 200 feet high.
Correct.
So that's also covered by this, even though it's a high bluff.
Correct. We do have on our Door County Planning Department webpage, we have a Door County web map, and it does show the areas for shoreline zoning. You can actually turn layers on to see what properties are included in
Excellent.
that area. In Door County, we have comprehensive zoning, and then some towns have chosen not to adopt comprehensive zoning. And in those towns, they would only have shoreline zoning. So we'll have towns where both apply. But shoreline zoning is in practice throughout the entire county.
Throughout the entire county. Okay, very good. I heard a word that I don't know enough about. Talk to me about impervious surface. I mean, is this the base of the Lorry Quarry, or is this a concrete driveway? What does impervious mean?
Okay. In the new regulations, which we are not adopting as of yet, but
Okay.
will be in 2016, the impervious surface standards will be lowered. We currently do have impervious surface standards in our ordinance that apply to the shoreline and interior, and the percentages are different depending on the zoning district that you're in.
Okay.
But impervious surface, there's a definition in the ordinance. It is anything that, the easiest way to explain is anything that's not green. Anything that doesn't absorb the water flow, that channels it off, would be considered impervious. So if you have vegetation or lawn, that would be pervious or permeable. And anything that isn't would count towards your impervious surface ratio maximums. In 2016, with the new rules that we will be adopting, and they aren't part of 170 that we're doing now, but the impervious surface ratio maximums dramatically decrease. So that will be a challenge for a lot of property owners, since we already were well over that. We allowed well over that, and most properties are well over what the new maximums will be.
So that's a blacktop drive, a gravel drive.
Correct.
Naturally roofs,
Right, the structures, sidewalks.
concrete patios.
Concrete patios, decks, walkways,
Decks, even though
hot
it might be
tubs.
gravel underneath?
yes.
Okay, I
Yep,
guess,
they count, yeah.
interesting,
Sure.
very interesting. Do these new shoreline regulations have any impact on holding tanks or mounds or septic fields, or is it everything, any structure?
No, the Door County Sanitarian Department
Okay.
would continue, they continue to regulate the sanitary end of things, and NR 115 doesn't impact those
Okay, so no
structures.
changes there.
They have their own setbacks within their sanitary code, correct.
Okay. Does it impact, say, landscaping, what you can do along the shoreline? I'm thinking of reed canary grass or Phragmites, getting rid of the invasive species.
No, the existing rules or the new rules don't impact that, and we
Okay.
encourage the removal of those invasive species. You can
Okay.
work with our Door County Soil and Water Conservation Department, actually, to get more specific information on how to keep those at bay or to remove those from your property.
Carrie Hagenow over at the invasive species team, yes.
Yes,
Yeah, because it's almost, to me, as important to know what this does not change as what it does change.
sure.
Because we don't want to raise any red flags and have people battering down your door about things that are not necessarily going to change.
Correct, yes. It doesn't change the requirement for where a permit's needed, so the new changes to the chapter will only reflect what's in the Act 170, and that is gonna, right now, deal with the non-conforming structures and what you can do with
Okay.
them. And additionally, what I forgot to expand on was the substandard lot section. Right now in the ordinance, if you have a lot that was created prior to zoning, it's a legally created lot. But we have minimum standards in order
Right.
to grandfather those lots so you can use them for construction purposes. In the shoreland area, There's a couple of different scenarios, but I'll just take the one that's used most frequently, and that would be that a lot has to be at least 50 feet wide and 7,500 square feet in lot area to be used for construction purposes. Act 170 now states that we have to adopt the new NR 115 rules with regard to substandard lots, and we can't be more restrictive, which states that any lot can be used for construction purposes. As long as it's a legally created lot, the boundaries were never changed over time, it hasn't been consolidated into one tax parcel, and it has never had its structure, any structures, over the lot lines. So if you had 4 very small lots, you could use each of them for construction purposes as long as you can meet all of the previous requirements.
So it is more user-friendly.
That is definitely very helpful.
That's good.
That's very good, yes. And then, of course, they have to comply with all the ordinance standards. So if somebody had a 24-foot wide lot, it'll be hard to meet all the standards and actually build something, because it would only give them probably about 4 feet of buildable area.
Well,
But
the only
at
thing you
least-
could put on it would be a silo.
Right, at least that it removes the grandfathering provision for those lots, because we had many lots out there that were 49 feet, and the people would have to seek a variance in order to use them for construction purposes, and this removes that. So as long as they comply with all the requirements in the ordinance, this is a very beneficial
Okay,
part of the code.
very good. Okay, I've covered a lot, and you've really answered the questions.
Sure.
You've obviously been reading this thing, right?
Right.
Been studying. So if a landowner is thinking of making changes, at what point should they involve your department?
Right up front, right at the beginning. It's very important to contact our department first. Set up a pre-meeting with us before you have an architect draw up plans, or have a contractor start drawing up plans in case they don't work. We encourage people all the time to meet with us at the forefront of their project, because we can give them really good ideas also about things we saw in other people's projects that will help pave the way to a really smooth and easy permitting process.
Okay. Now, you mentioned 2016, 2014, a lot of dates. Is there any printed material at this point that's available to the homeowner?
We have just our general ordinance, and then there's shoreline guides from the DNR, but we will be creating our own new kind of guidance to NR 115.
Excellent.
It won't have specific material in it, because we can't cover
Everything.
it, right, too specific, but it at least gives some generalities. And ultimately, they just need to contact the zoning administrator to work through their project, which we're happy to do.
Okay, so what are some of the key important dates that pop into your head?
Okay. Well, these new rules will go to public hearing shortly, probably within the next couple of months, and go through county board, and then they'll be effective immediately after that. The 2016, the remainder of what I call the new NR 115, the NR 115 that's in place now, but it has a delayed implementation date, we most likely will start working on that at the end of this year. So we have the new regulations written sometime in 2015, and then we can go to public hearing probably in the winter of 2015, 2016, and have them in place for that next season.
So there's ample time for public comment and adjustments to the new rules.
Actually, the new rules, there can't be any adjustments made. NR 115 is a state mandated administrative code, and towns don't have any ability to make the comment, and neither does the public. They're welcome to the public hearing, and we'll answer any questions, but those rules can't be changed. We have to adopt what NR 115 states, because it is state mandated.
State mandated. Okay, very good. Is there anything else you'd like to throw in to help our viewers understand a better future? Because it sounds like there's challenges and benefits with this new 170.
Right. And I think probably some of the challenges will be for the zoning administrators in terms of the mitigation aspect, because we'll be the ones having to monitor the mitigation ongoing. And the property owner should know that that mitigation agreement that they're entering into will be placed on the deed. So if they sell the property in the future, the new property owner will know what's in place, and they're essentially very aware then and have a heads up.
They'll have to take care of that rain
have to-
garden they put in.
Correct.
Okay.
The main thing I think would be is that if anybody has a project, please contact us. We'll set up an appointment and go through what all the rules and regulations are, what the rules and regulations could potentially be in the future. The way we do water setback averaging will change in the future,
Okay.
and that could have an impact on people's projects. So it's very possible that something could work now, but maybe not in 2 or 3 years in terms of what the required setback is.
Okay.
But that would be, I think the main thing is always contact our department if you're planning a project, and be
Well,
very
if
happy
If they
to
want to
sit down.
contact you, we need to let them know that you're in the county building at 5th and Nebraska?
Yes, we're at 421 Nebraska Street, right across from the library. We are on the 3rd floor and we are the Door County Planning and Zoning Department. Our phone is 920-746-2323. And there's 3 zoning administrators in the county that take care of, we each have our specific areas. So they can let the person who's answering the phone know what area they're in, and they'll get the appropriate person.
Excellent. We about covered it?
I think we have.
Well, good. Our guest today has been Kay Miller, the
Zoning administrator.
Zoning
one of the
administrator.
administrators.
What a great title. Kay Miller is with the Door County Planning Department. And Kay, thank you very much for sharing and exploring new things today. I know it's not all poured in concrete yet. We don't want that because it's an impervious surface.
Very good.
But the opportunities and challenges with the new DNR regulations. And especially, thank you for your time, because I know you're a busy person.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and thank you very much for your time. And
It's been a treat. I'm not any better looking, but I'm probably a lot smarter. You've been watching Access Door County with me, the host, Dan Mathein, and we've been talking to Kay Miller. And Access Door County is carried exclusively on Sevastopol TV, which is channel 986. And thank you for watching.